Hello, it's Dr. Tirrell, and I just wanted to update you about how the course is going to proceed, as I mentioned in my previous email. So the takeaway is that following university guidance, the course is switching over to synchronous online meeting. We're going to be using the university's Zoom video conferencing platform, which I'm using right now. I don't know about your previous experience with it. I've actually taught a few online courses that use Zoom, and it does give us a lot of flexibility to do some of the things we normally do in class, such as breaking into small groups and sharing documents and sharing desktops, that kind of thing. So that's the takeaway is we're still going to be meeting at the same time on the same days, right? But instead of actually going to Morton 204, we'll be meeting virtually through the video conferencing platform. So as I mentioned, I've done courses like this before. Of course, they were designed for it. We didn't switch over midway. So we're almost certainly going to encounter problems as we go along, such as, the situation. But we'll resolve those together as we move forward. And again, the big takeaway is we're going to be meeting at our same schedule. There's synchronous classes, but instead of doing that in person, we'll do it online. What I wanted to do was share my screen with you just so we can walk through a few of the things here. Oops, into a loop there. So here's our calendar. And as I mentioned, we're going to be using Zoom. If you look down here at our calendar, things look pretty much the same as before. But you'll notice that now all of the class meeting, the agenda, it's headed by this link that says online course link. Now those all actually point to the same place. We have the same meeting space every time. So you don't have to worry about, did I click the right one or what's the link this time? It's always the same link. This is really just here for convenience. So when it's class time, which for us is 1 o'clock on Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Yeah, this is section 2, sorry. Then instead of coming to class, you just click this and it doesn't matter where you are. I do encourage you to go ahead and click this before the start of class because it'll direct you to a place where you can download the Zoom software. I can't show you right now because I'm using it. So if I click this, it would stop this room and take me to the other one. But it has a client for Mac and Windows. It has apps for smartphones and tablets. And I've actually used the tablet app like at conferences, on hotel Wi-Fi, and it worked fine. It worked well. So I've not had too many problems with Zoom before. But I do suggest that you click this early just so that you can download the software. You technically don't have to install Zoom. It'll allow you to download essentially just sort of a runtime that you can just run from your desktop. That way it doesn't install anything. I'd encourage you to go ahead and install it, particularly if other classes that you have are going to use this, because all courses are going to no contact. So it may just save you the effort if you go ahead and download the software, but that is up to you. Because this is going to, a video conferencing platform, ideally what you'll have is, some form of machine with a camera and a microphone and speakers, right? Now, if you got a smartphone or a tablet, it's already there. They're all going to have cameras and mics. Computers, Macs will have this by default. Not all Windows machines are going to have a built-in camera, but many do now. So ideally, you'd have access to that. And the school, because everyone is shifting to this, we're all in the same boat. The school is trying to figure out how to provide access. So like if you don't have those things, can you get hardware through the school? They're working on that right now and they'll update you. But they are confronting these issues. If for whatever reason you just can't get access to, say, a camera, the next best option would be audio capability, right? A mic and speakers, and you should be able to get away with that. Or, if you have a camera and you just don't want to be on camera, it's probably fine. We probably don't need video as crucially as we need audio. So if you want to, mute your video, or if you don't have a camera, that's probably fine. I know we're all going to be in weird situations. I have, as I've mentioned, I got a young daughter and school's canceled, so we have to do childcare, but we still have to be at work. So it's, we're all in weird circumstances. So anyway, you do probably need audio at least. If you can't get those, we will need to talk with the school, because it's just, we're moving to completely online. Essentially, the entire university is. So it just means you have to have access. The upside is the university should be able to work with you in order to get access. So some of the things Zoom will do for us, it does allow us to share screens like I'm doing now, and you will be able to do that as well. I have set up the settings such that other people can share their screens. Hopefully, we'll see. When I've done this before, it's worked fine, but you never know. You always run into problems, particularly when the pressure is on. But we can share screens, we can share files, we can actually I can break us up into separate groups. So we'll start, all in the same room where we can talk and listen to each other. But then if we have small group stuff, I can split you into breakout rooms, they're called. And it just sort of subdivides it such that you can only hear and talk to your small group, and then we'll come back together. In theory, I've done that before, but we'll see. I've never done it quite like this without testing. And so we'll see. The first time we run that will be a nice big test. The other thing is it should record these sessions as well. So this, comes up since we are still meeting at our regular time. This is being recorded. So sometimes people wonder, do I even need to participate if this is all being recorded? The answer is, for our purposes, you do, because we're going to be doing stuff just like we would in class, right? We're going to be able to do most of the stuff we did in person class virtually. So we're still going to do that stuff. If you miss it, you miss the opportunity to turn it in. I will still be recording attendance, but nobody's going to fail or anything for missing classes. But if you miss a session when we do something and the work is due in class, like workshops, right? We do those all the time. Then you'll miss it, just like you would if you missed an in-person class. But it is being recorded, so you can always go back and consult the recordings, particularly like if you can't get access right here at the beginning. That can be sort of a Band-Aid where it'll tide you over until you can get appropriate access. So that's something to point out. I think that's everything I wanted to say about Zoom. We can share files, we can share screens, we can get into breakout groups. Hopefully it'll be pretty smooth. I have some experience with this, but we're going to run into problems almost certainly, and we'll just solve them as we go. These are unusual circumstances. For us, it's not completely new because we've had hurricane shutdowns, and at least now we have power and our homes are okay, right? But it's a weird circumstance. We're going to have problems, and we've had to adjust some of the things in the course, and we'll just solve them as we go. We'll fix them. What that means also is if you have problems, I ask you to contact me, right? I'm probably for some things just going to have to redirect you to the university. Like if you have access problems, I'm probably just going to have to find someone for you to talk to in another unit of the university, because I probably can't solve those problems for you, but I can be your point of contact, right? So let me know and I'll figure out who you need to talk to. It's weird because we're not even supposed to meet now. They're really just trying to curtail any personal interaction. So it's a weird situation. That's the gist about Zoom. Let's take a look at the calendar, because the calendar, and then one other quirk, had to have a few changes, right? Because we missed a week here with the extended spring break, and some things have to shift because we can't do like in-person stuff. So some things changed. There aren't any big radical changes, just some things got moved around, and some things we were going to turn in, like in person, we're now turning in as files and that kind of thing. The big headline would be the research paper has moved its due date to the 30th. It was previously due this week, which obviously is not possible. So I pushed it back 10 days to the 30th. That'll give us time that, again, we lost to do draft and revision stuff. So one change is I am asking you on the 23rd to please do your reading as before. And then I'm asking you to submit a draft research paper. People always ask, understandably, how complete does my draft have to be? And for my purposes, I don't have a threshold for how complete your draft has to be. I do want you to have something to turn in because we're going to be doing peer and instructor feedback. So we need something, right? But as it points out, I don't have a stipulation about how complete it has to be. However, the more complete your draft is, the more specific your feedback can get, right? If you're a lot further along, people can point out, in a very concrete way, you might shift this, or, might do that, or this needs evidence or whatever. If you don't really have that material ready to go, I mean, you don't have nothing because we've already done our method design and our lit review. So those sections are, already kind of in draft format. But if you haven't moved on from there, probably people will just tell you, well, you need to, finish your research so you can write it up. And that. So your feedback won't be that great if you're not very far along. But it's up to you. And there is a trade-off between how far along you are and the specificity of feedback. And the further along you are, sometimes how reticent you are to make big changes, right? If you haven't really committed to a pathway yet, it's easier to change than if you've really committed and someone says, ooh, you really need to rethink that. Sometimes that does happen, though. I pointed out, like I was doing all this text mining that was useful, but it doesn't really pertain to our revised research question. So I'm probably just going to have to not include it. I'll use it somewhere else or something, but I'd spent all this time and effort, but it's not going to probably make it in. That doesn't mean it was wasted. That happens all the time, right? You go down a path and it's like, I need to branch off somewhere else. That's just how research and writing works. What's going to happen when you submit your draft is Canvas. That's another good thing is we've been using Canvas, so no big change here. It'll automatically circulate drafts. I believe I set it up to do it anonymously too. So you'll get two people's drafts. And that means two people will look at yours. And we're just going to provide some basic feedback. What do you believe is the draft's strongest aspect? And if this were your draft, what's one way you would consider revising it? We're actually going to be doing that on Friday. That's going to be our draft workshop. So we're going to be doing that in class. You're going to get some feedback from me as well. It's why I'm asking you to turn it in on Monday so that there's time for me to give you feedback and time for us to do peer feedback. So that's all part of the same big headline, which is our research paper has been pushed back 10 days to the 30th. And that gives us time not only to do drafting and revision, but also straight up just to finish. I know some folks were doing methods where, like survey methods that if you didn't do them already, it may be tough to do them, right? Because we're not supposed to really contact people. That's just, a part of life now, right now is social distancing, right? So how do you do a survey if it's in person in a pandemic, right? Maybe you can't. Maybe you have to switch to an electronic one and figure out how to manage that. So this will also give us some time to buffer if we need to change methods, right? Hopefully you know that right now and you're already thinking about how to change if this applies to you. But this will buy us some time, right? And again, that's very common. It almost never is because of a pandemic. That happens maybe a couple of times in your life, hopefully. But sometimes you do have to change methods because of weirdness like this, right? Weirdness just happens and you have to figure out what to do. And that's not, it's just part of it, you have to change methods. We'll find a way forward together. If you're in a super pickle, just let me know and we'll figure out what to do. So that's kind of the big thing. Much of the rest of the calendar is pretty similar to the way it was. A couple of things have shifted. You'll notice we've got the reflection, which was there. It's a form-driven document that's going to be due on April the 3rd. I don't have it linked yet, but it asks you to generate an abstract for your work. It asks you, what publication you targeted. And then it asks you about your design process. Like, how'd you spend your time? What'd you learn from doing this? It's a reflective document. It's important, but it's not super long because it's just a form where you fill out blanks, basically. And it's not worth a whole lot. It's, I think, 5 points, whereas, the research paper is like 50, I think. And then many of the other elements are 10 points. So the preliminary research and the reflective document, those aren't weighted as heavily. And that's reflected by the fact that they don't require as much of you. So we'll take a look at that when we return. And then it'll be due on the 3rd. We'll then also pick up with our poster once we submit the research paper. That has shifted positions because we were doing the presentation next and then the poster, but we had to kind of flip them just so that the times synced up. But we'll take a look at that. And the poster is a common research genre where sometimes you don't give a live talk at conferences. You submit a poster, and it's what it sounds like. It's just a big research poster that condenses your findings, and they set them up in a room and people walk through them and read them. It's very common in the sciences. You wouldn't know this unless you have been to conferences, but the two main things are talks and poster sessions. So these are both real things that you do when you're communicating to internal audiences. We'll have a workshop for the reflection and the poster. You'll notice the reflection workshop's on the same actual day that it's due. That's because it's just not as involved as the others. It's just, it's mostly kind of personal questions about how you spent your time. And so you don't need a lot of, workshop material for that. But we'll do our posters. We'll present our posters actually in class. We'll do it electronically because we can share files. You'll show yours, you'll talk about it for a couple of minutes, and that's how that'll go. Then we'll move on to our presentation, and we'll have a couple of workshops about that. We'll read about it, do workshops. All of these we're going to, read and then workshop. In fact, for the poster, we have a visitor from CSURF. Well, a virtual visitor. They'll walk us through what this genre is. We're not going to be printing them out. They'll just be PDFs, but they'll still talk about how to design them. So anyway, we got our presentation, then we'll read and start up with our public text, which it's kind of our last thing. And as we know, man, public texts are so relevant right now, right? I mean, public communication of science, you see it right now in the emails we get from the school and from the state, you see it right now in the news. It's such a relevant topic. Now, we only touch upon it here at the end because this is the writing class that's for internal audiences, right? This is writing in the scientific disciplines. So we focus on internal specialist audiences. We do have another class, English 313, that's writing about science for public audiences. So if you're really interested in that kind of forward-facing thing, if, for example, you don't end up wanting to be a research scientist, you end up wanting to do some kind of public communication aspect, I'd really suggest that class because it focuses on this aspect of public audiences. We're just going to touch on that. It's devoted to it. So that's the gist. If you haven't looked really closely at the calendar, you may not really notice that many differences because it's the same stuff, basically. It's just kind of been shuffled around a little bit. And then just a last couple of things, and we'll wrap up. Here on the syllabus, my office hours have moved to being virtual as well. So there's a link here that just under office hours, you can click that and it'll take you to a Zoom space where we can chat. I'll be there during these times, but I probably won't have my camera on because that's creepy, right? I don't want the camera staring at me while I'm working. And I forget that it's on. So I'll be there, but probably what'll happen is, you'll click there, it'll take you there and it'll notify me, hey, someone's here. And so it'll take me a second to kind of meet with you. But that's how that'll work. If you want to meet, just shoot me an email. We'll just schedule a time and then I'll just, we'll be there at the same time or whatever. So just be aware that office hours are now virtual. The only other thing to point out is that we now have more workshops just because of the way the things broke. What ended up happening is we were going to do our presentations in class, but we can't do that. So you're actually just going to submit them to me as a recording and we'll talk about it as it gets closer. But that means we had these days that we could use for workshops. So we have some more workshops than before. I didn't change the number of points this is out of. It's still out of 13. I think, though, we have 15 workshops, if I counted correctly, which means you can just pick up some extra points. You can get up to 15, but it'll still be out of 13. I'm not going to change that. It just means you can pick up a few extra credit points. It's not a lot, although we're only at a 165, so it's not nothing. But you'll have the opportunity to pick up a couple extra bonus points. That's really the last thing. Yeah. And then, as I mentioned, I am still taking attendance, but no one's going to fail for missing class. But, if we're doing a workshop and you're not there to participate, then you don't get that point, right? That's pretty much how it's going to work. If you do have problems, just contact me. We'll figure it out because we're going to have problems. I mean, the day we get back, although this is a later class, so maybe I'll have it hammered out, but I can guarantee something's going to explode. We'll try and do something. Zoom's going to crash because everyone's trying to do their class all at once. It's already starting to happen. I mean, I recorded this a couple of days ago, but it didn't make it because of things are constrained because of bandwidth. The entire nation is trying to do this all at once. So something's going to go wrong. It's not a big deal. We'll figure it out. And, we've been through this kind of stuff before, right? I mean, with the hurricane, we've been through this. Man, your class, gosh, you guys need to get some semesters where just nothing happens. We need just some normal semesters is what we need. But we've been through it. So we'll run into problems, we'll solve them together, and we'll figure it out, right? We'll just keep moving forward. That's all we can do, right? Is to take on our problems when they happen and just to fix them and move forward. That's what we'll do. If you have problems, contact me. As I mentioned, let me stop sharing here. I'll probably have to direct you to some aspect of, campus IT or whatever for those kinds of issues, but anything else, I can always be your point of contact for all of that stuff. Really, any problem you have, just let me know so I'm in the loop about it. That's the gist of it. If you have any questions or anything, contact me. Otherwise, we'll be back in class just virtually on the 23rd. Make sure to do your reading and please submit your draft paper so that we can get comments, right? You'll get them from me, you'll get them from peers. So we want to have a draft version of that research paper in. And, originally it was supposed to be due a few days before. So I expect folks will have at least something draft-wise there. And we've already done the method design and the lit review. That's why we do them, right? And our preliminary research, it's to help us go step by step creating our research paper. All right, I will talk to you next week. I'm excited to see how this goes. We'll solve our problems as they come up. All right, folks, I will see you. Stay safe.